Hey everybody, Ben from Nutshell here, and joining me now, all the way from Lisbon, Portugal, is Mark Colgan, Chief Revenue Officer at TaskDrive. Mark, thanks so much for being here.
Hey Ben, thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to sharing some of these lead sourcing playbooks today.
Of course. So before we get into that topic at hand, why don't you tell our viewers a little about what TaskDrive does?
Sure. So TaskDrive is an outsourced service where we help sales and marketing teams with their lead research and data enrichment. So we take over all the heavy lifting and grunt work on behalf of our customers, and we help them build net new lists of leads, enrich their existing data, and help them understand their accounts by providing account-based insights.
Right. And lead generation is one of the biggest challenges facing B2B sales teams because every market is so competitive now. Every day there are more and more brands competing for the same pool of potential customers. And if you're an outbound team, a lot of that prospecting responsibility falls on your shoulders. So from your experience, what are some of the main challenges that sales teams encounter when they're prospecting for leads? Why is this so difficult?
Sure, I think there's quite a few challenges. The two major ones that I find time and time again when I speak to customers and other peers is the first one is about time. It's very time consuming to go through and research appropriate leads and also find the relevant personalizational points that you want to use in your outreach, whether that be via cold calling or email or even LinkedIn. So timing is the biggest factor, and really you should be spending your time on the phones and replying to emails and sending out personalized messages. But you need to make sure you block out that time to do the research, and that's the other challenge: the consistency of doing so. Especially if you are an SDR and you have calls or emails to reply to, it can be quite hard to find a consistent block of time just to do the research.
Right. So what makes a good lead in your opinion? Not a perfect lead, but a lead that's at least worth a seller's time to pursue.
Sure. So for me, there's plenty of qualifying criterias and frameworks to use. Some would argue that some are out of date. Others would argue that it's the best thing to use still. For me, I like to focus on the pain points and the challenges that I know that my buyer personas are having. And really what I try and do is speak to people who are experiencing that pain point, because if they have these challenges and they are trying to overcome them and your solution or product can help them overcome it, these are much better people to speak to than just somebody who matches the job title in your buyer persona.
Right. So you've come up with 14 lead sourcing strategies to help sales teams find not just more leads, but better leads. And if our viewers want to see the full list of those, we'll put the link in the description of this video. But we're going to dig deep into a few of those right now. And the first one I love is the event hijack. Now, we generally think of business conferences as a good opportunity to meet potential customers. But attending these events can be really expensive. So how do you get the benefit of event networking without actually having to go anywhere?
Sure. So there's a few ways that you can do this with the event hijack, as I named it. So one of the best ways is to look at the list or look at the attendee list. Certain conferences provide all of that information if you're attending. Others are a little bit closed, and you can maybe only see those attendee lists if you're exhibiting. However, a lot of conferences now are using apps so that you can connect with people ahead of time. And that can be a great resource for you to go through and pull out the attendee list. It's a bit of a manual task, but it gives you everybody that's attending that's created a profile. Another way that you can get in front of the people that are attending these events is that you could do and run some geo-targeted advertising campaigns based on the actual event venue itself, and draw a radius of 1 kilometer or a mile around that area, and just target those ads to people who are traveling to that location. And you see that quite often when you're at conferences now. I'm not the first one to suggest it. So you may see as you're scrolling through your feed that there's adverts that are relevant to you.
Yeah, that's really clever. In another lead sourcing playbook that's sort of in a similar realm is the social expansion. And here you're not looking at event attendees, but the followers of influencers and thought leaders, kind of people who might speak at these events. So how do you find these people, and what's your approach to this kind of prospect?
Yeah, so this is another great time to find people who are interested in potentially the solution or product that you have. So one of the best ways to do this is use LinkedIn, especially if you're in the B2B world. Have a look for those influencers who are sharing content, and to take a couple of examples. If you're looking at the MarTech industry, then the chief MarTech, he produces content on a regular basis and often talks about the MarTech landscape. Now, if you were supporting that industry or had a product or service, you could see all those people who are commenting and liking on his posts. And what you could then potentially do is go through all of the comments and see those people that are engaging positively with Scott's post, and then reach out to them and start the conversation and use that as the initiation of a conversation.
Yeah. Let's talk about the in-market playbook for a moment. You know, we recently did a big feature on the Nutshell blog on SaaS sales. And one of the big takeaways was how important it is to be aware of not just your direct competitors, but all these peripheral solutions that might integrate with your product as well. And that's what this is about, right? Finding users of complementary products that might be interested in your own as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, this won't work for everybody, but it certainly works very well in certain verticals and niches. So you've got to remember that the people that you sell to, they have multiple responsibilities and challenges within their day-to-day role. And whether or not your service or product helps them solve one of those challenges, they still have other things that they need trying to get through. So the example that I often use is I helped a company or a copywriter. He was a cold email copywriter. And we went and looked at all of the cold email tools that had launched on Product Hunt and looked for the people that have upvoted those products. Because those are people who are using or likely to be using cold email tools. And we used that as the basis of his outreach. So he was able to start conversations with people he knew were using cold email tools and therefore pitch his services when the time was right.
Right. And you know, one thing that can make a prospect more likely to buy is not just the interest they have in what you're selling, but also the authority they have to make that purchase. And that's basically the logic behind your new role playbook. We're looking for prospects who are recently promoted. So what's an efficient way to find information like that, and what would your first contact to those people look like?
Sure, yeah. So a new role can happen if they've been promoted internally or they've started a new role and joined a different company. The best resource for me that's pretty much accessible to everybody listening is LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So you can set up alerts for particular job titles and follow leads and prospects that meet your buyer personas. And you actually can get alerts and you can see those that have changed roles in the last 30 days or 90 days maybe. And if you wanted to initiate the conversation, you could start by saying, congratulations on the new role, or I noticed you moved into a new role. What's also really interesting about this playbook is that a lot of people who start new roles, especially if they're more senior, they will bring technology into the new business that they've just started with, especially if they're moving from one business to another. Mm-hmm. And there's multiple cases of where people who are huge fans and advocates of particular technology that have low barriers to switching would bring that technology and introduce it to their new team or to the new company they've just started.
There are a few other lead sourcing playbooks you talk about that are less about prospects' intent signals and more about changes at their company that might signal that there's an opportunity there. And one of those is the new Technology Playbook, where you target companies that are installing new technology and software tools. I had no idea you could even do this, sort of keep track of what companies are installing or using or bringing onto their own software stack. So tell us how you even get this information and what's the benefit there.
Sure. Okay. So it doesn't work for every technology. I usually use the rule of thumb of if the technology is integrated with their website, it's much easier to find. So they might have started using HubSpot Forms or some live chat software, maybe some analytics software as well, like Hotjar, for example. You can use a company or use a tool like SimilarTech. You can set up alerts within SimilarTech of the specific technology, the specific geographies, and you can even add in website stats as well. So you could say websites that receive more than 10,000 visits per month, for example. And each day you get an alert to inform you of new companies that have added the software and also companies that have stopped using the software. And both of those are perfect triggers for you to initiate a conversation with these target accounts if they meet your buyer personas.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And as I said at the jump, you can see the rest of these playbooks at the link in the description. But before I let you go, Mark, I know you like to talk about an often overlooked middle step between prospecting and outreach, and that's preparation. So what should a seller do right after they collect a bunch of these leads using these methods?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and as you say, often overlooked. So the main thing that you need to do is collate all of the information in a central place, and typically a spreadsheet is enough for this. You then want to make sure that you clean the data and make sure that the people that are within those the research that you've performed meet your buyer personas. Because look, taking Product Hunt, for example, the first 200 upvoters may have just been friends or friends and family of the tools at launch. So you want to go through the data and make sure that they fit your ideal customer profiles as well as the buyer personas. You also then want to enrich that information because you're not going to get the email addresses straight away. So you need to go and find that using various tools that you can to collect emails. And verify those emails as well. That's a very important step too. And if you have somebody else doing the research for you, make sure you have somebody in addition verifying that data. I see a lot of companies that have outsourced these tasks to VAs, and the VAs do a great job at the research, but no one is double checking the research from a VA. Once you have your data and you feel that you're ready to go, the next important step is to segment all of that information, because if you've just used 3 or 4 of the playbooks that we've discussed now, there's actually different triggers and different signals that you want to allude to when starting the email outreach, if you're going with email. And here is where you can then start to personalize the message based on the trigger or signal, and then also the persona pain point, or if it was a piece of content that was related to a topic, then you also want to include that in your email. But the beauty is you can do a lot of this in a spreadsheet and then import that into many of the cold email platforms that exist out there as merge tags.
Awesome. Well, that's all I have for you today right now, Mark. Thanks so much for sharing some of your knowledge. And if people want to know more about you or TaskDrive, where should they go?
Sure. So to find out more about TaskDrive, you can visit taskdrive.com. And if you'd like to connect with me and pick my brains, I'd be more than happy to speak with you. So you can find me on LinkedIn at Mark Colgan.
Mark Colgan, everybody. Thanks for watching, everyone. And stay tuned for more from the Boundless 2020 After Show.